Tov. Today's daf yomi is Gittin daf. Hey, Gittin 80, but we're going to start on the bottom of Ayin Tetzim Days 70 on B at the Mishnah. It says in our Mishnah, Kosav with Shemalchus Shemo Dennis. Let's say you're supposed to date the get, but this person is sitting in Babylon and he writes that the get was written in such and such a year, but he doesn't date it by the Babylonian kingdom, he does it by a different kingdom. And this kingdom is, the Mishnah calls a kingdom that's not worthy. And the Gemara is going to say that that's a reference to Rome. So if he writes it basically for the Roman kingdom, it's going to be disqualified. Or if he writes it with Shem Malchus Madai, or if he writes it for the Median kingdom, or with Shem Malchus Yavan, or for Greek, or Binyan Abayis, or the number of years since the temple was built, or Korban Abayis, the number of years since the temple was destroyed. Or how you have a Mizrach because of the Marv, or if he's in the east and he writes it in the west, or the Marv because of the Mizrach, or the west and he writes it in the east, and then she goes out and gets married on the basis of this get, she's going to need to leave both marriages. She needs to leave this second marriage, and she needs to leave the first marriage. She's going to require a divorce from both. She requires a second divorce from the first person, and she requires a get from the second person. And even though the second person she wasn't really married to, because she's still married to the first one, we require it from the second person because of a gezer, because of a decree, as the Gemara in Yevamos, Pechasim Abayis, explains. The Elah will ksuva, and she loses the rights to her ksuva. That whole purpose of the ksuva is to make it difficult for the husband. And one of the purposes of the ksuva is to make it difficult for the husband to divorce her. So in this case, she loses her ksuva, well, payros, and she loses the concept of her husband gets the fruits of her estate, of her nefsei malug, of some of her assets, and in exchange for that, he has to redeem her from captivity. But now he doesn't have to redeem her anymore. The husband doesn't have to support her below, and he doesn't have to, and she doesn't get the worn out clothing she brought in. She doesn't get it from either husband. And in Nakla Mizan, if she took the money from either one, she has to return the money, Vlad Mamzer, and the offspring from both of them is going to be considered a Mamzer. Meaning to say, let's say she goes back to the first husband and she has a son from this first husband after she was not allowed to be married to him anymore, that's going to be, she says, rabbinic Mamzer. And rabbinic Mamzer is actually even worse than a regular mamzer, because a regular mamzer can at least marry mamzeres, but a rabbinic mamzer can't even marry a mamzeres. We're on the bottom of the 79b, 3 lines from the bottom. And neither husband is able to become tummy for her if they're kohanim. How could the second one be a Kohen? That's what the forum discussed. If she's not allowed to marry him, if she gets divorced, she can't marry a Kohen. So how did she go and marry the second one? So that's a discussion. And neither one has the rights, not to her objects that she finds, not to her salary. Well, about first, and they can't revoke her vows. If she was a regular Jewish girl, an Israelite, she's going to be disqualified from marrying a Kohen because we're going to say she's a Zona. She's a harlot. The Stam Zona, Rashi says, is a married woman who has adultery with other people while she's married to her husband. And so therefore, she's disqualified from marrying a Kohen. And on top of 80a, the Gemara says, and the Mishnah continues, Bas Levi, if she's the daughter of a Levi, she's going to be prohibited in Meiser. She's not going to marry, she's not going to eat the Meiser, which is typically given to the Levi. And typically, Yisrael is allowed to eat it. But in this case, meaning after it's given to the Levi, the Yisrael is allowed to eat it. But in this case, we're penalizing her. As the Gemara Yevamos tells us on 91a. And Bas Kohen, Minat Truma, and if she's the daughter of a Kohen, she can no longer go back and eat the Truma. The Ein Yorshin Shalzeh, the Yorshin Shalzeh, Yorshin Tsuvasa, and her sons that she has from either one do not inherit her ksuba. What kind of ksuba are we talking about? Didn't we just say, the Gemara in Yevamos, 91.8 says, didn't we already just say she lost her ksuba? So what does it mean they don't inherit her ksuba? So the Gemara in Yevamos answers that we're talking about the ksuba spun in Dichrin, which is the male son's ksuba, meaning to say that if her father wants to make sure that his money doesn't go to her husband's children from a different marriage. So they would make a male ksuba that the money would go straight, not as part of the whole estate, but it would go straight to her children. But in this case, she loses that right, even though her father had set up that way, she loses that. Excuse me. The meso, and if either of these men die, we don't allow the brothers of either of these husbands to do yibum, but we require rabbinic chalitza because the second one has to do chalitza rabbinically, and the first one has to do chalitza minat Torah. We require them to do this rabbinic chalitza. The second one, the first one has to do chalitza minat Torah. She says, Shina Shmo B'Shmo. Let's say they puts the wrong name, her name or his name, Shemira Shemira, the wrong city. Takes it Mizeh Mizeh. Then we're going to say under these circumstances, she has to leave both marriages. We have all these prohibitions. All these prohibited relationships, which in the first Mishnah in Yevamos we said, Staros Seyan Mutaros, that normally speaking, if a woman's husband dies and he has no children, then she has to do yibum or chalitza with his brother. But let's say his brother is married to somebody who is prohibited for this woman to be married to. You're not allowed to marry, for example, two sisters or a mother and a daughter at the same time. Then, under those circumstances, she's permitted to go and marry anybody without having to do yibum or chalitza. So all of those cases where we said Terosem Mutaros, that their co-wives are permitted, let's say these women went, Benisu, and then they went and they married in the marketplace, and then they discovered that the woman who their potential Yavam was married to was actually a disqualified marriage because she was an Ayol. This means say she was unable congenitally to have children, and say she wasn't really a full biological woman. So then, under those circumstances, states saying Mizeh Mizeh, so then the person who she remarried, she has to leave that marriage because she wasn't allowed to marry him without having even a chalitza first. And so too with the opposite way. Akones is Yivamto. Let's say he marries his Yivama. Let's say when a man dies, if he has multiple wives, and then one of them does even more chalitza, all the others are permitted to marry whoever they want. So this one marries this woman, and then her co-wives from the first marriage went ahead and married another person. And then say Zushai Sailonius. And then we discovered that the one who she did marry is indeed an Ilonius, and so it wasn't a valid Yibum. Then the woman who married the co-wife, she has to go and leave both marriages with all these penalties. Cause of sofer get for each and shofar each. So let's say the sofer did something. He did the whole get properly. He wrote a get to give to the man so that the man could give to the woman, and then he wrote a receipt for the woman so the woman could give when the man pays her the ksuba, I'll give her the receipt. But he made a mistake. He made a terrible mistake. He made a terrible mistake, and he gave the get to the woman to give to the man because he made a mistake, and he gave the receipt that happened to anyone, the shover ish, and he gave the receipt to the man. And then each one ended up giving it to the other one. And then after a period of time, hurry, I get you, it's to me out of ish. And then the man discovers he has to get. He gave the woman the receipt. And the Shobram Yadish, and then the woman discovers that she has the receipt that she had given the man the get. So now she went out and she remarried. She has to leave both marriages for all these penalties that we were just describing. Whereas Rabbi Lazar says, wait, Imra Alta Yad say if they discover this immediately, then Ein Zeh Get. Then we're not going to say it's a get. If it happened immediately, we're not going to say it's a get because we're going to say under those circumstances that obviously she did the wrong thing, and then she has to leave both marriages. But if it was after a period of time, and we'll discuss how long, get, then we will say we don't care that she's producing the wrong document now and he's producing the wrong document. We're going to say it's a get because we'll call a man min arishon social sheni. We're not going to allow the first husband, to destroy all the rights of the second one. And we say that maybe there's a communia between them. And so therefore we're going to say that she was really divorced and she's married to the second person. But what about the fact that she's saying, I'm still married to the first guy? How can we say her the second one? How can we say she can remain married to the second one? So that's a big question that the Ran and the Durham discusses, and that's something that the Rishonim discuss. So the Gemara says, "My malchus sheino." Again, it's what does it mean when it says if you write in the document for a kingdom that is not worthy? What does that mean? Who's that? Who used your right to get to? Malchus Aromayim. That refers to the Romans. And my Carly malchus sheino. Again, it's why is it called a kingdom that's not worthy? Why is it called a kingdom that's not worthy? So the Gemara explains. Because they don't have their own language. They don't have their own script in their own language. They got it off from another nation, probably the Greeks. Why did they establish that you should date the get by the number of years of the king? Mark explained because of the welfare of the king. I mean to say this will help you get along better with the kings. Rashi explains. We want to have peace with them. So we wanted to say we want to say that we are distinguished in their eyes, that we write the contracts using their names. So therefore we should put their kings into our contracts. So the Gemara asks, so if that's the only reason, just so we get along with the kings, we're going to say she has to leave the second marriage. Kate say that is there any offspring she had? Their offspring is considered a mamzer only just because we want to appease the king. This is a rabbinic enactment. The Gemara says yes. Anybody who changes from the formulation that the rabbis established with the get, the offspring is a mamzer. Then the Mishnah said, if he writes it for the Greek kingdom. If he said if we write for the Romans, no good, she has to leave, and we write for the king, it's also for the Greeks, no good. It's true, but we need all these cases. Yes, we know Malchus again. It's if we just had the case of the Roman kingdom, so we said the Babylonians might have got upset there because the Romans are a competing kingdom of a Malchus mother, Malchus Yavan, but the Greeks and the Deans, those kingdoms, even though they were once great, now they're finished. Whatever was. They're done. Yes, we have Malchus Madai and Malchus Yavan. And if we just have the kingdoms of Madai and Yavan, we would just say Misham the Malchus. At least they're kingdoms, so therefore the Babylonians wouldn't like it. And we'll say the get is not good. Of opinion of bias, but the temple, that's also destroyed, so they wouldn't care. But yes, when a million of bias, and if we included that in, but the Amina come with Karish the Babylonians might not be upset because they'll say, oh, they're just mentioning their glorious history of a korban. So therefore, we don't want to allow, we're upset or insulted. Of a korban bias with the destruction of the temple, the sorrow, that's great pain for them. Maybe the Babylonians wouldn't mind. They know, whoa, and therefore maybe the get would be okay. So therefore, we need all these cases. Even Nijach, because of the marriage, he's in the east and he writes in the west. So the Gemara says, who's in the east? And he writes it in the west. Man, Elaim about if you want to say the husband is in the east and the sofa writes that he's in the west, I know that's isn't that the same thing which the Mishnah says he changes the name of his city? El Rav Sofer, so it must be described as in the east, and the scribe says I'm in the west. Kedamaru Rav Safra, Bafeinamaru Ravuno Safra, like Rav said to his scribes, and Ravuna said to his scribes, Ki Yasi Visu B'Shile, when you're sitting there in Chile writing it, Sovu B'Shile, write that you were writing the get in Chile, even though when you were told to write the get, you were in Hine. Write the place where you're writing and not the place where you were appointed the scribe. And when you're sitting there in Hine, even though you were told to do it in Chile, if you're in Hine, write it in Hine. So Rabbi Yehuda said, the name of Shmuel on the top of 80b. Hold on 1 second. So he says, Zudivrei Rabbi Meir, this idea that if you put in the wrong kingdom into the document, it's disqualified, that's the position of Rabbi Meir. But the Chachamim say, even if you only write the name of the Santer, the governor of not the governor, the land surveyor, Rashi says, the person who's in charge of telling you who gets which portion, then you're going to be divorced. Ahubita, Davik Sivde was shame, Istandara, Divashachar. There was a get that was written for the purpose of the governor of Vashkar. So, Sholcha Rav Nachman Bar Rav Chisda L'Kamei D'Rabba, Ki Agav Namai. So Rav Nachman Rav Chisda said to Rabbah, what's the law in this case? So in this case, even Rabbi Meir, who says that it's no good if you change the kingdom, or if you wrote it for the governor, it'll be good. My time, huh? So he says it's because it's from the same kingdom. And so therefore the king wouldn't be upset, so it's valid yet. So why is the land surveyor no good, but the governor is okay? So the Gemara says, by the land surveyor, it's disrespectful to the king. You put in this little low-level clerk. But the governor, it's praise for the king, and so therefore it's going to be a valid get. This is the position of Rabbi Meir that if it wasn't written for the purpose of this right kingdom, it's disqualified. Chum say the offspring is kosher. Modim Chacham or Rabbi Meir, but the Chum agree with Rabbi Meir. Shem Shina Shmo v'Shma Shem Ira v'Shem Ira Shabama. If they change the name, her name or his name, or if they change the name of his city or her city, that the offspring is a mamzer. So Amar Abashi Afanan Nami Tinina. Rashi says, indeed, we learned this in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says Shina Shmo Shma Shem Ira v'Shem Ira. Teitzim Izeh. It says that if you change his name or her name, the name of his city or her city, she has to leave the marriage and call out Jacham Eoba, and she gets all these penalties. Haman Katanila, who's the one who said this position? Elam, Rabbi Meir, everyone say this statement of our mission follows Rabbi Meir. We are video listening Inu. We should have written together with the first one if they are all the positions of Rabbi Meir. So we see that the first case was Rabbi Meir about the changing of the kingdom, but this case, Shema Mina Rabbanan, this case is the position of the Rabbanan that if you change his name and her name, the rabbis would say it's a disqualified get. All these prohibited relations, all these cases which they said that they're tzarosei and mutaros that the co-wife could marry, but if she went ahead and married on that basis and then it was discovered to be an islandess, then we're going to say that she goes back, that she has to leave both marriages. So the Gemara says that's only Nisu if she went ahead and married another person. Nisu in, Zinu lo, but if she was just adulterous, we wouldn't make her, we would allow her to go back to the Yavam. So the Gemara says, this must be a reputation of Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna, she marries Yavam Shezinta. Rav Hamnuna taught if you have a woman who is waiting for Yibam and she committed adultery, Asur Yavma, she's prohibited to go back to her Yavam. So our mission must be a reputation of Rav Hamnuna. So the Gemara says, "Lo, nisu our mission, when it says if she married, it also says the same thing. There's also the same law if she was just adulterous. And the reason why I mentioned nisu, Mishnah Ma'alya enough, but it's to tell us the Mishnah speaks in a refined language. It doesn't want to mention adultery at all. The alternative reading in this Gemara is nisu. If she gets married, she can't go back to the Yavam. And also if she committed adultery. Let's bring a proof for this statement of Rav Hamnuna, who said that a Shemeretz Yavama Shezinta is a Suro Yavama, that if she was waiting for even when she had an adultery, she can't go back. So Yavam. So maybe this is the proof for it. So the Gemara says, no, that's not what it means here. Our mission means Nisu Davka. Our mission means that only if she got married can she not go back to her Yavam. Because then we might come to think, we might confuse this with the case of a woman whose husband went overseas, and then she went ahead and married because she got testimony that he was dead. Then we rule she has to leave both marriages because we're of the position that maybe people will think Mafsir Bushasa was okay, that if you marry somebody else after she was divorced, after she remarried, you're not allowed to remarry her. But if you would allow this woman who she thought her husband died and then she married somebody else to go back, you might think Mafsir Bushasa was permitted. And so to here also, you might come to think in this case that case is permitted. And so therefore we don't allow her to go back if she remarried. Ikone says Yivimto, somebody who marries this Yivama, and then he discovers, it says our Mishnah said Ikone says Yivimto, and then her co-wife went out and married somebody else, and then we discovered that she was an islandess, then she has to leave both marriages. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah listed two cases. What are the two cases in the Mishnah? One is the Mishnah had said the case of the Mishnah teaches us two laws. First, it teaches us that somebody marries his Yivama, and then the co-wife goes out and marries somebody else. So then the co-wife has to leave both marriages. And the Gemara also tells us if the co-wife was an Erva and then this woman went ahead and married somebody else, then the co-wife is going to be, and then the co-wife was an islandess, that she has to leave both. It's true if we need both cases. Yes, we know about Kamai. So if we just had the first case where the woman herself thought that the co-wife was an Erva and she was exempt from, where the co-wife was Erva and she was exempt from Yibum and she went out and married somebody, I would say we shouldn't go time mitzvah Yibum. Maybe in that case we're going to make her read both cases because she didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Yibum. But in this case, the Kayim mitzvah Yibum, where she did fulfill the mitzvah of Yibum, she went ahead and the mitzvah of Yibum was fulfilled, and then she went ahead and married somebody else. We're going to say, well, maybe we wouldn't say she has to leave. He asked me in and if we had the case where we just had a case where the mitzvah of Yibum was fulfilled, but we don't have the case of the co-wife of being an erva, we say we shouldn't become Ramya Kameh, because we were saying that case is different because she had fallen to her husband for Yibum. But in that case, if she didn't fall, we wouldn't say it's true. Therefore, we need both cases. Then the Mishnah says, so then we have the last case of the Mishnah on the bottom of Peyam Beis, where the scribe gave the get to the woman and the receipt to the husband. So the Tanakama says she has to leave both marriages, which Rabbi Elazar says if they discovered immediately she has to leave. But if it was after the fact, we are concerned that maybe they were doing the kanunya, trickery, and then we don't make the second husband be penalized. So the Gemara says, what does it mean when Rabbi Elazar says if they discovered immediately? What does it mean immediately? What does it mean if they discover it later on? As long as they are engaged in discussing that very matter, that's going to be considered immediate. But if they stood up That means after the fact. Rav Acha says, if she didn't get married, as long as she didn't get married, that's called the altar. That's called the medieval. He says, but once she gets married, that's called the later period of time. Let's try to bring a proof from our Mishnah. That the first one doesn't have the right to lose the merits, to destroy the merits of the second one. So this makes sense according to Rav Ada Bar Haba, who says that if she gets remarried, Hainu de Katani Sheni, that's why he talks about a second one. El Shmuel, he doesn't talk about a second husband. So my Sheni, what's the second one here? So the Gemara says, it refers to Sheni. The second one refers to the merits that were accrued for her to marry a second person, meaning to say that from the time that she has the presumption that she was divorced, she has the right to marry another person, and the husband is not believed to take away these rights. That's what Shmuel would say. All right, we'll stop the daf for today here. God willing, we'll pick it up.